What is your best advice for studying? Okay, that's all the question says. I'm assuming you're a student pilot. I don't know what level you're at, what certificate or rating you're after, but I'll just assume you're a private pilot. And you probably are a private pilot if you're still trying to figure out how to study. And I say that because one of the biggest things I learned and best things I learned when I was getting my private pilot certificate had nothing to do with airplanes. And it was something that I myself, it was the last thing I expected to learn in that process of getting my private. And that thing was, I learned how I learn best. In other words, I learned how to study. I never figured out how I study best until I was studying for my private pilot. And then when I got into my instrument, I continued to hone that skill. It's a skill. Studying is a skill. And it's a skill that is different from one person to another. Different people learn differently. And so your job while flight training, I'll start with this with answering the question. Your job is to figure out how you study best, not how I study best, and not how your parents study best, not how your siblings or friends study. Your job is to figure out how you study best and to hone that. It's a skill. You want to perfect that skill and you want to become very efficient at it, especially if you're one of those people who's headed to what's called a fast track aviation program where things happen fast. It's like I think of it as a treadmill that doesn't stop moving and you can't get off. You got to figure out a way to stay on. And so the more efficient you figure out your own studying, the better off you'll be. So keep that in mind. I'll start with that. So my best advice for studying, there's many pieces of advice I could give as far as studying is concerned. But I guess to answer this question, I'll take it in one direction that I happen to find over and over again that is underutilized when it comes to studying for student pilots, which I think if it was utilized more and there was more attention being paid to it, people would be better off as far as their studies are concerned. And before I share what that thing is, let me just say one of the biggest issues that I experienced when I was going through my own flight training and that I see student pilots struggle with in general is we come into this world of flight training and it's a brand new world to us. We know nothing about it. I knew nothing about it. When I don't have anyone in my family who's a pilot, nothing. And here I am, I find myself coming into this world and I know there's a lot of studying to be done. And the thing that got me, and if you could relate to this, please feel free to, because this is a big thing that I see over and over again. The biggest pain that I had when it came to my flight training was not quite being able to figure out where are the edges of this swimming pool of knowledge that I need to learn. It wasn't the need to study and put in my time and work hard that scared me. It was not quite being able to see where does this pool of knowledge that I need to acquire to become a pilot, where does it begin and end? Where are its borders? I couldn't quite figure that out. It seemed like an ocean with no end. And that was intimidating to me. I wasn't afraid of studying and working hard and putting 100 other things in my life on hold to make this happen. But if I can't see the limits, if I can't see the edges of the swimming pool and I need to drink all this water, that's intimidating. And that was very intimidating for me. And it's very intimidating for many, many students, especially when you're a private pilot starting out. When you're an instrument-rated pilot, again, as with most things in training, at that point you have some experience with the industry, you know what it's like, and you could figure it out. But when you're a private pilot, it's like, where does this begin and end? Example, we need to learn weather, right? If you typed weather into Google, you could spend the rest of your life reading articles about weather and never reach the bottom of it. So imagine being a student pilot who shows up to flight school and you hear that you need to learn weather. Well, what does that mean? What does I need to learn weather mean? How much of it do I need to know? And that is a very intimidating thought to have as a private pilot. So my best advice for studying is this. There is a document out there called the ACS. It's on Google. You could find a PDF file of this document. It's called the ACS, Airman Certification Standards. That's what it stands for. And this file, this PDF file, not too big of a file, the ACS, literally has in it all of the different categories and topics and maneuvers and skills and pieces of knowledge that you will be tested on your check ride. Not only does it have it all in there, it's broken down topic by topic. So it takes you throughout the entire flight. So if you open up the ACS and you go to the table of contents, it starts out with pre-flight preparation, pre-flight procedures, or preparation procedures, I believe, whatever it is. But it takes you through the beginning all the way to taxi, takeoff, maneuvers, emergencies, and then eventually landing. And then at the end, I think, is night operations. But it kind of walks you in order through the whole thing as if it's a real flight or a given flight. And it's powerful. And the reason the ACS is powerful and unbelievably underutilized, for whatever reason, I don't know why it's underutilized, but the reason it's powerful is because if you use the ACS as your guide to keep you on track as far as what you need to know and what you don't need to know, it provides you with those limits, with those boundaries, with the edge of the swimming pool that I talked about earlier. It gives you a good idea if it's something you need to spend time on for your private or not. Now, I didn't know this when I was going through private. Many students don't know this. They heard of the ACS. In fact, I've met many student pilots who've never heard of the ACS, which is shocking to me. But even those who have heard of it are not using it to the extent that it can provide them with value and be a tremendous resource. So back to the question, my best advice for studying. Again, there's a million different things we could talk about when it comes to studying. Like I said before, biggest thing I think is just figure out how you study best and hone that skill. But if we want to get practical, use the ACS, especially starting out. Take that ACS, print it out, and become a expert with every single topic in that ACS. And if you ever sit at home, you find yourself at home and you sit there and you go, oh, I'm bored right now. I don't know what to study. I studied everything. Open up the ACS and go through it. And if there's anything in the ACS that you are not 100% fluent in, spend time studying it. But the ACS will serve as your guide, it will keep you in line, on track, and it will show you the boundaries, the edges of the knowledge that you need to have going into your check ride. So for the sake of this question, the thing that came to my mind, and again, I see it way underutilized for some reason, is the ACS. Use the ACS for your advantage. It will keep you organized in your studies. You could take it, copy the ACS into a Word file, and then add your own notes under each line. Like, study it in any which way that works for you. But I would say the ACS is one of my best pieces of advice as far as studying is concerned. Use that document, become utterly familiar with it, and I think you'll find that training becomes a lot less intimidating just because you now have a good sense of where this whole ocean begins and ends.